Hi there! Thank you for joining our Sensory Play and Sensory Processing workshop. I'm Jacqueline Kennedy from Outside the Box Educator Workshops. If you're interested in more of our workshops, you can visit our website at www.outsidetheboxworkshops.ca. Today we're going to be talking about activities for children ages 2 to 12. They're going to be activities that are simple but really highly engaging, activities for inside and outside, and some real-life examples. Some of the things we're going to be discussing today are the roles and benefits of sensory play, sensory preferences, the vestibular and proprioceptive systems, red flags, sensory play and incorporating curriculum, sensory bins, and sensory materials storage ideas. There are a lot of amazing activities shown in this workshop, so if you'd like to take notes, feel free to do so. Let's start off by talking about the importance of sensory play. Sensory play is crucial for brain development. It is something that builds nerve connections in the brain, and that allows children to complete more complex learning tasks. It helps build an understanding of objects, spaces, people, and interactions. It develops the child's sense of touch, smell, taste, sight, and hearing, as well as movement and balance. It encourages scientific thinking and problem solving. The sensory systems will help a child observe and form a hypothesis, experiment, and make conclusions. Sensory play is really important for language development, cognitive growth, fine and gross motor skills, problem solving, and social interaction. Sensory play is really important to develop and enhance memory, and sensory play can be used to help with self-regulation. It will help children learn sensory attributes, which means words like hot, cold, sticky, dry. It is not only for children with sensory integration issues, every child of every age benefits from sensory play. When you're incorporating sensory play into your program, think about what senses you can include in that activity. You could include scent by adding vinegar to a science experiment. In this photo, I've given the children vinegar and I've colored it with food coloring. I also provided eyedroppers to allow them to have a mini science experiment. Children can use sight, watching the colors change while they're doing a color mixing activity. The activity that you see in these photos is something really engaging but super simple. For this, you're going to need some clear plastic cups and some dried out markers. Fill the cups halfway with water and allow your children to place the dried out markers into the cups. As the children add the markers into the water, they will see a variety of colors appear. Then they can mix their colors to make new colors. The best part about this activity is that it doesn't stain because all the markers are washable. Children will develop a sense of hearing while listening to others, communicating, and sharing materials. In this photo, these kindergarten children were really excited to build a river. They worked together to dig deep enough to see the water. They also used different kinds of natural materials to build a bridge to cross over it. The children discussed a lot of strategies and ideas while this was happening. They talked to each other and decided where to dig and how deep to dig. Seeing them cooperate and have a common goal was really inspiring. You can develop taste by adding activities to your program such as infused water. We experimented with taste by adding lemons to one jug of water and limes to another jug of water. We had the children taste both kinds of water and then we graphed which one they liked the best. You can develop a sense of touch with pretty much every activity that you implement. Have you ever thought about painting with your feet? How about making mud wedding cakes? Or building a tower with Easter eggs and Play-Doh? Sensory play is a big part of fine motor development. When you provide sensory experiences, you're helping the children develop the muscles in their hands, fingers, and wrists. When you provide these activities, they become one step closer to using scissors with ease, writing their name, zipping up their own zipper, and pouring their own milk. It's really important to include sensory tools when you're adding sensory experiences into your classroom. Adding a large variety of tools ensures that your children have an opportunity to develop proper grasps. It's really important that young children develop pincer grasp, palmar grasp, pinch grasp, and tripod grasp. These grasps are what are going to allow your students to write their name properly, dress themselves independently, tie their own shoes, color inside the lines, and open containers. If you're wondering what kind of tools you can add to your program, how about things like turkey basters, tongs, scoops, eyedroppers, clothespins, clamps, funnels, watering cans, measuring cups, whisks, ladles, spoons, spatulas, and colanders. On rainy days, I like to bring out turkey basters to allow the children to play in the puddles. I also love adding real kitchen and baking materials to the outdoor space. In the second photo, you can see this student is making me some chocolate soup. The third photo shows a really simple sensory bin using water that's been colored with blue food coloring. Take a look at the children's hands in these photos. You can see all of the different grasps that are happening while they're using these tools. Every time they use these tools, their hands are getting stronger, which means they are one step closer to being able to write their name, cut with scissors, and pour their own milk. It's important to ensure that you offer a variety of tools to ensure that your children have the opportunity to learn different grasps. Children need a strong pincer grasp, palmar grasp, and tripod grasp for things like painting with a paintbrush, holding a pencil properly, coloring inside the lines, and cutting with accuracy. In the first photo, the children are using syringes with colored water. Take a look at the tripod grasp that's happening in this photo. This is a similar grasp that a child will use to hold a pencil properly. The second and third photos show palmar grasp. This is one of the first grasps that children will have in their development. Allowing the children in your program to have opportunities to scoop and pour and dump and fill is really important. Activities like these are really helpful for hand strength and accuracy. It will help the child be able to pour water from one cup to another without spilling, scoop their own ice cream, or stir the ingredients in a bowl to make something delicious. Putting sensory bins in your program really welcomes a lot of social interaction. Sensory activities encourage children to communicate, share materials, and form friendships. In this photo, I made some homemade kinetic sand. Here are some of the things that I noticed the children were saying. I am making a castle. Can you help me make a snowman? This stuff is soft. Can I use that scoop? It looks like an ice cream. You'd be amazed at what kind of great observations you can get by sitting down and observing the children during a sensory play activity. Now we're going to talk about sensory preferences. I find that being aware of sensory preferences can really help you identify a child's learning style. The first sensory preference is spatial. This is someone who prefers using pictures, images, and spatial understanding. Someone who is auditory musical will prefer sound and music to learn. Linguistic learners will prefer using words, both in speech and writing. Someone who's kinesthetic will prefer using their whole body, their hands, and a sense of touch in order to learn. Mathematical learners prefer using logic, reasoning, and systems. Interpersonal learners prefer to learn in a group or with other people. Intrapersonal learners prefer to work alone or use self-study. Think about yourself as an educator. Which learning style do you feel that you identify with? You may see that two of these learning styles stand out to you. I like to keep learning styles in mind when I'm teaching because I find it allows me to create programming for specific students that might be struggling in certain areas. It really helps me create learning that's a lot of fun. It's really important to be in tune with your students' learning style and sensory preferences. You can use that information to create amazing curriculum, smooth transitions, routines, and form connections with your students. If you understand the child's sensory need, You can also assist them with behavior guidance and their overall well-being. We're now going to talk about signs of sensory processing concerns. They might struggle to focus and concentrate. They overreact to loud noises. They're always touching things and other people. They have difficulty with fine motor skills. They chew on things that they shouldn't be chewing on. They're sensitive to certain clothing. They might walk on their toes. They can spin without feeling dizzy. They might come across as an extremely picky eater. You may notice them bumping into objects and others. They might really dislike crowded places. You might notice frequent meltdowns, and they might seem very easily distracted. Can you think of a child that you worked with that exhibited some of these signs? A lot of these points are very similar to signs of ADHD. It's very common for children with sensory processing issues to be misdiagnosed with ADHD. It's important for educators to know the signs of sensory processing so it's not mistaken for ADHD. There are different ways that you will help a child with ADHD versus helping a child with sensory processing issues. It's not our job as educators to diagnose children. However, it's important for us to recognize when there might be a concern and then change our program accordingly. If you have a child in your program that's reacting to loud noises and you're able to find a way to decrease the noise in your classroom, then that will help the child have less challenges. If you have a child with significant delays in fine motor skills, you can add activities to your program to help strengthen those skills. If you have a child in your program that's sensitive to certain fabrics, you can work with the parents and find ways to avoid wearing those types of fabrics. If you recognize a child in your program seems to have frequent meltdowns, especially when they're in a crowded place, you can make an effort to take that child aside and do more one-on-one or small group activities with them. As educators, if we are aware of what's going on and we can adjust our program, the children will have an easier time adjusting. We've talked about the five senses, but did you know that there are two other sensory systems that are often forgotten? First is the vestibular system. The vestibular system is located in the inner ear and it has to do with balance. So this is knowing when your body is moving, when it's spinning, when it's swinging, when it's hanging upside down. The vestibular system is the first system to develop in utero. It's the first system to have an organized response to sensory input. It's the most protected area of the brain, and it has a very close relationship to gravity, safety, survival, arousal, and attention. Someone with vestibular issues might display some of the following behaviors. Poor balance. So this is someone that has frequent falls, especially during hopping, skipping, or walking on a balance beam. Babies with vestibular problems are typically delayed in learning to sit, stand, or walk. You might notice that the child is W sitting and has poor posture. W sitting means that instead of sitting crisscross with your legs, you're tucking your legs underneath and sitting that way. W sitting actually causes a lot of issues with muscles and development. You can end up with back problems and leg problems and knee problems. If you notice one of your students often sits in a W sitting position, try to encourage them to sit a different way. Someone with vestibular issues will often move really slowly and cautiously. They may often need to spin or climb up high or swing. It is someone that will seem unaware of dangers and risks. They appear lost in their environment or have difficulty locating objects. So this might be a student who is constantly leaving their water bottle in the wrong place instead of putting it back in their cubby. You might notice rocking, spinning, twirling, or frequent head tilting. Someone with vestibular issues might prefer sedentary activities. They may have difficulty sitting still or unable to sustain attention without moving. Sometimes if you have a vestibular issue, you do need to move in order to pay attention better. So this is why it's often misdiagnosed as ADHD. The student might have difficulty with reading, writing, and math. They might slouch, hold their head up with their hands, or prefer lying down. So this could be a student who, instead of sitting crisscross at the carpet, prefers to lie down at the carpet. Now that you've seen the list of vestibular concerns, think about the children that you work with and see if any of that makes a connection. If you do have a child in mind, here are some ways to help improve the vestibular system. Sitting on a rocking chair, rocking on a yoga ball, rocking in a hammock, playing on playground swings or blanket swings, doing yoga, hanging upside down from playground equipment or over a couch, playing row, row, row your boat, leapfrog, head and shoulders, knees and toes, or wheelbarrow walking, spinning in large circles on a tire swing, or spinning in an office chair, riding a scooter board or a bike using a sit and spin, having them pull a wagon, practicing on a balance beam, riding on a seesaw, walking on a suspended bridge, bouncing on a large exercise ball, doing log rolling, especially down a hill, playing twister, sled rides, balance boards, obstacle courses that include jumping, crawling, and rolling, skipping or galloping, trampolines or jumping on a couch, and somersaults, cartwheels, and handstands. The second system we're going to talk about is the proprioceptive system. This system is being able to know where your body is in a space and where your limbs are in relation to your body. It allows us to know where our joints are positioned, as well as the amount of force against our body and the effort our muscles need to apply it at any given time. The student in the photo is able to sit on the edge of the table without losing his balance because of his proprioceptive system. Proprioception is the body's ability to sense its location, sense its movements, and its actions. It's the reason that we're able to move freely without consciously thinking about our environment. Being able to walk or kick a ball without looking at your feet, and being able to touch your nose with your eyes closed. Those are some examples of your proprioceptive system working. If you have a student that you are particularly concerned about, see if anything from this list connects with you. A child with proprioceptive issues are going to have specific clothing preferences. So they may enjoy tight clothing. They might have meltdowns with certain clothing. So they might refuse to wear snow pants. They might refuse closed-toed shoes. They might refuse long pants. They might hate socks. They might dislike the seam or the tags on clothing. They might have a strong preference for certain types of materials. They might not like zippered clothing. They're very particular with their clothing. And their clothing needs to be just right. I remember working with a student who outright refused to wear snow pants or splash pants. I also noticed that they hated wearing closed-toed shoes and they preferred Crocs. They also wore shorts all year round and really hated wearing long pants. Something else you'll notice with someone who has a proprioceptive issue is they're going to have trouble recognizing their own strength. They're going to press with a pen or pencil too hard when they're writing. It could actually go through the paper. They're playing too rough. They're hurting themselves or others. They're bumping into things often. They're crashing into things. They're jumping off of objects. They're walking too hard. They're pushing too hard. They're playing with toys too hard. They're going to have volume control issues. They're going to be loud for no reason. They may often invade others' personal space. And they might have a need to constantly touch. You might also notice some mouthing behavior. They might chew on their fingers, bite their nails, chew on pens or pencils. They might have a need to chew gum. They might be chewing on their clothing, their collars, or their sleeves. They might chew on the strings on their jackets. Or they might chew inedible objects, taking a bite out of strange objects. Have you ever worked with a student who always had a wet collar or wet sleeves from chewing? You're also going to notice difficulty with motor planning. You're going to notice balance issues, difficulty standing on one foot, frequent falls while walking or sitting. They need movement in order to concentrate, so you might notice tapping their foot, spinning, jumping, rocking in their chair. You might notice clumsiness, so dropping things and bumping into things, poor posture, slouching, or placing extra weight for balance. avoiding certain movements or activities, such as climbing the stairs or walking on uneven surfaces. And you're going to notice a preference to W sit with their legs tucked under them as opposed to sitting crisscross. Here are some ways that you can help a child improve their proprioceptive issues. Give tasks that include heavy work, like shoveling snow, carrying laundry baskets, carrying buckets of water, carrying groceries, or climbing trees. Deep pressure therapy is also very important, so things like weighted blankets, sling swings, or hammocks. Allowing them to do gymnastics, cartwheels, wheelbarrow walks, somersaults. Jumping on a trampoline, doing push-ups, crawling, bouncing on an exercise ball, throwing and catching a weighted ball, crawling through an obstacle course, doing a tug of war, pulling and pushing and resistance activities, blowing bubbles, drinking with a straw or drinking thick liquids through a straw, blowing up a balloon, playing a wind instrument, pillow fights, or climbing up a slide. Now let's move on to sensory bins. Here is a quick how-to on how to create a really fun sensory bin. Ensure that your bin contains enough filler for scooping and dumping. I like to have at least 1 inch of filler in my sensory bin. Add tools or animals or accessories. Have a bin that's large enough for at least 2 children to play together, because again, we want those social interactions. If you're worried about mess, introduce your sensory bin with something that's easy to clean up, like fake flower petals or pom-poms, rather than introducing sand or water first. It's important to teach the students what the expectations and rules are for the sensory bin. Go over the rules with your students. Teach your students how to clean up if they do spill. Have towels close by or brooms close by. When you first introduce a sensory bin, it's really important to play with the students and model how to use the materials appropriately. Show them how we keep the water in the bin. Show them how to keep the sand in the container. Sit down and do some observations of the play that's happening at the sensory bin. If you're looking for some interesting storage ideas, check this out. It's often difficult to have a sensory bin in your room if it's taking up a lot of space. Here is a great sensory bin hack and a way to save space. I like to create sensory bins using storage containers with 3 plastic drawers. I create a different sensory bin with different sensory fillers in each of the drawers. In this photo, the first filler are glittery rocks and hearts. The second sensory bin is ready to be filled with water, and the third sensory bin is filled with gems. When I'm ready to open a sensory bin, I simply pull the drawer out of the stand and place it on top. I use the stand as a table. When it's time to tidy up, I simply put the drawer back in its place and tuck it away. This system is only about 2 feet by 3 feet, so it's an incredible space saver. And I love the fact that you can have 3 sensory bins available at any time. The drawers are small enough that you can empty them and bring them to the sink for some quick disinfecting. In the third photo, you'll see that I have a plastic storage container separately sitting on top of my drawers. This specific container is what I like to use for water play. Sensory bins don't have to be big and expensive. All you really need is a 3-foot by 2-foot shallow storage container. I prefer using storage containers because I find them way easier to clean than the large sensory bins on wheels. It's also a lot faster for me to change the sensory bin into something new when it's small. One question I am often asked is, how do you store all of the fillers for your sensory bins? Here is a simple solution. I like to store all my sensory bin fillers in shoebox size containers. I prefer buying clear containers so I know exactly what's inside the bin. I find that a bin this size filled to the top with sensory filler is enough to create a sensory bin that you saw in the previous slides. This also allows me to see if I need to replenish my sensory fillers. If you're looking for some ideas on what to fill your sensory bins with, Here is an awesome list: aquarium gravel, rocks, glass stones, buttons, ice, ribbon, flower petals, beads, corks, seashells, aloe gel, tissue paper, polyfill pellets or kidfetti, balls, salt or sugar, coins or poker chips, shaving cream, Play-Doh, feathers, dirt, snow, mud, soap foam, fabric scraps, baby oil, tinsel, sand, kinetic sand, sand and shaving cream, jelly bath, sea glass, slime, goop, which is cornstarch and water, hair gel, hay, gems, water and essential oils, wood shavings, wood cookies, wood pellets, Lego, sticks, yarn, conditioner dough, vase fillers, water cubes or fake ice cubes, pom-poms, cotton balls, straws, biodegradable packing peanuts, Epsom salts, shredded paper, grass, water beads, acorns, pine cones, and rubber bands. Now I'm going to give you some examples of sensory bins. Here we have a sensory bin filled with snow, dried out markers, ice cream scoops, and ice cream bowls. The students colored the snow with dried out markers, and this became an ice cream shop, a smoothie shop, and a cake shop. In this sensory bin, we have water that's been colored green, some dinosaurs, and some containers. During this activity, the children said that it was a dinosaur hospital where they were making medicine for the dinosaurs. Here we have a simple sensory bin that's really easy to clean up. Try adding pom-poms into your sensory bin with scoops, ice cream scoops, clear plastic cups, clothes pegs, and muffin tins. You might notice your students making cakes, cupcakes, smoothies, and potions. If you're interested in something super slimy, how about some jelly bath? You can find this product on Amazon. It's really easy to use. The product is a powder that you add to water that'll create slime like you see in this photo. You don't need a lot either. Just a teaspoon of the powder will make enough slime to fill a sensory bin. They have other versions of this product as well. It comes in slime form, jelly form, and fake snow. Here is what the jelly version looks like. Just a teaspoon of the powder made this whole sensory bin. The great thing about this is it's non-toxic and biodegradable. If you have this product in your sensory bin, I recommend having a towel underneath or a carpet underneath. If the children drop this on the floor, it can make the floor slippery, so please keep that in mind. Here we have an ice painting activity. I made some frozen blocks by freezing water in old applesauce containers. Then I placed them in these trays and I gave the students some paint to explore with. It was really interesting to see what kind of color mixing they did, especially as the ice began to melt. Here is a quick and easy sensory bin if you have some leftover play sand and shaving cream. These two together created a really cool texture. The students were able to experiment with building structures with this mixture. If you're looking for some fun things to add to your outdoor space, how about adding baking materials and some colored water? You can make batches of colored water by simply taking a water bottle and putting some dried out markers inside and letting it sit overnight. You can put the colored water into squirt bottles or ketchup bottles and have the children decorate the snow. Here the students collected the colored snow to make some wedding cakes. Another way to add something new into your outdoor space is to bring some watercolor paint buckets outdoors after a day of building snowmen. Here you can see 3 students are working together to paint the snowman they made that morning. We also used paint to write our name, trace our hand, and draw pictures for friends. Children love colored ice in the wintertime. Use washable paint and water to freeze multiple shapes of colored ice. Place them in your outdoor space with some loose parts, some wagons, some buckets, and some containers. They are great for building, sorting, counting, and treasure hunts. Having an indoor recess? Bring the outdoors in. Take some slabs of ice from your yard and use it as a canvas for beautiful watercolor creations. Just put out a towel, some trays, slabs of ice, and watercolor pucks. Look how beautiful they turned out. Another way that you can use slabs of ice is to place them on a tray with colored salt. To color the salt, simply put some in a Ziploc bag with a few drops of food coloring and shake. The colored salt creates a lot of really cool reactions with the ice. This is a really fun science experiment with a beautiful result. If you're looking for an environmentally friendly sensory bin filler, how about filling it with paper from your office shredder? If you're looking for a sensory bin filler that doesn't create a big mess, try fake flower petals. These can be found at most dollar stores. This is a great activity for springtime. Fill your bin with fake flower petals, bugs, tongs, cups, and bins. Another way to fill your sensory bin is to use ball pit balls. You can find these at the dollar store. If you include a lot of tall, clear plastic containers, scoops, and trays, you'll find that your students will create a lot of really interesting things. The balls might turn into cupcakes, or soup, or eggs, or muffins. These are a great loose part to inspire imaginative play. How do we add curriculum into our sensory play? I'm going to show you an example from my kindergarten program. The students in my program were observed showing an interest in dinosaurs. To expand on this, I placed dinosaur skeleton photos along with some salt dough at the table. I encouraged the students to make their own dinosaur bones using the salt dough. The children talked about which bones they made. Some of them made horns, some of them made ribs, some of them made tails, legs, and necks. We left the salt dough to dry, and then once it was dry, I placed it in a sensory bin filled with sand, paintbrushes, and brooms for excavating. When the students were told to choose a center, this became the most popular center in the room. I noticed that the students shared materials and they worked together to gently uncover the dinosaur bones. They were acting like real paleontologists. Something else I observed was that the children stayed at this activity for long periods of time. They also wanted to come back and explore a second time throughout the week. Since this activity went so well, I decided to do an extension activity. Together, the students and I created a batch of green salt dough. I encouraged the children to make their own dinosaurs, and I included some loose parts like pasta, buttons, pipe cleaners, foam shapes, googly eyes, toothpicks, etc. The children created their own dinosaurs with a lot of unique details. The first photo shows a stegosaurus with spiky plates on its back and its tail. In the second photo, a mommy and a baby were made. The third photo shows a brachiosaurus with its own unique twist. It was awesome to see that all of these creations were one of a kind. I decided to move on to another extension activity the following day. I presented my class with one of those hatching eggs that you can buy from the dollar store. I told them that I found a real dinosaur egg and that we were going to hatch it. I asked the students, what kind of dinosaur do you think will hatch? How many days do you think it will take to hatch? We placed the egg in water, and each day the children did documentation on paper. Each day there would be slight changes in the egg. The children would come to the table and draw the changes that they noticed. They made a lot of predictions and asked a lot of questions. The best part about this activity was that students who often did not show an interest in writing voluntarily came to the table to do this activity. Even children that weren't at the stage of writing yet came to the table to draw what they saw. Because I provided an activity that was based on their interest, they wanted to come and start learning how to write. As you can see by this photo, there is a lot of interest in this activity. The students are drawing and writing if they can, and students that are not able to write yet are making a strong effort to write. If you're feeling a little intimidated by including sensory bins in your program, just remember all the ways that they help children learn. It's not just a mess. Look deeper. Think about all the skills that your students are learning every time you introduce a sensory activity. You'll likely notice that your sensory bins are the most popular activity in your classroom. It's important to include sensory play no matter what age group you're working with. I hope you learned a lot about the value of sensory play in early childhood education. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate you taking the time to watch this workshop. We have lots of different workshops on various topics, and you can find them on our website. I hope you enjoyed this workshop, and we hope to hear from you soon.